another night we can come together and fellowship, eat together, share life together, to pray to you because you are great and glorious and awesome and so deserving of our praise. We could never give you enough. But also just to give us time to sing songs of praise to you and worship. To worship you because you are worthy and to give you that. I pray tonight that you remove distractions from us. Help us not to worry about earlier today or what we need to do tomorrow, but that we can learn tonight, learn about you as a creator, and how you knit us together in such an amazing way. Give us knowledge and transformation so that we will have a voice to share truth with those around us, that our faith and our knowledge of you will grow and grow, and that you will always transform us, change the way we think, which will change our hearts and the way that we function and move in this place in our lives. And I just pray for your encouragement and your strength. Give me your words to say that will touch lives, not for my glory, but for yours. We just praise you for all these good things, all that you've done here, all that you're doing, and all that you're yet to do. We praise you for this night. In Jesus' name we pray. Thanks, guys. So, a couple things to get us started tonight as we begin to do some transitions here. And I'm glad you're here for this time to kind of transition out of our 242 format. This will be the last night, at least for now, for 242. And it's been a wonderful thing, but we continue to adapt and develop and change things along the way. And that's part of what's gone on here. You know, we created 242 early in the year, and we wanted to do something that was unique and much more like what you would see in the early church. And so 242 is based on Acts 2:42. I talked about it yesterday if you were here. And that idea of fellowshipping and praying, and studying the apostles' doctrine, and eating together, and having a sense of awe together. And it's been a wonderful thing, and I have loved every bit of that. And we'll continue to do these things because if you were here yesterday, you heard that those things like that aren't just good ideas. They're biblical things that define the church and define who we are and why we do things together. And so what this is doing, though, is we're going to a third service, which this coming weekend will be the beginning of that. That's a huge milestone and a huge thing for us. Going and changing because we're growing and continuing to grow, and we need to go to a third service. We really had two options for that. One was we could knock out the back wall and build a bigger auditorium, which just isn't really feasible right now. And so your other option is to make a bunch of people mad so they leave, or nobody. Come on, it's Monday night. I know. I was just joking with you. Or add another service. And so. So I'll tell you the truth, and I've kind of mentioned this before. God had to really work me over to get us to go to a third service. I have hesitated and whined about it constantly, and God took me to task in July on that topic, and so it was time, and I'm glad he did in July, because if he hadn't in July, we'd be in a lot of trouble right now because we barely can fit in there in two services. So I'm glad we had that time. We began talking about it, what that would look like, and how it's going to go. And one of those things that you'll see if you come to the early service, which is at 8:30. So really what's changed is instead of 9 and 10:30 is 8:30, 10, and 11:30. And so even if you come to the 11:30 service, you'll probably still beat most of the Baptists to lunch because we're trying to get done in 65 minutes. So you probably have a decent shot. Are you guys going to be this boring tonight? Come on, you can liven up. We've got fun stuff to talk about, so I want you to, get some caffeine. It's right here. There's some tea. So the 8:30 service, the music style will be much more like what we do on Monday nights, which is one reason we're adapting Monday night a little bit. And so if you aren't particularly fond of the full band, 8:30 service is going to be the right service for you. Now, if we find that people don't really want that lighter music, we may change that up down the road. We have permission to do that. We can change things around and go to the full band. But right now we're going to do that unplugged styled worship time on that first service on Sunday mornings. And then the 10 o'clock and the 11:30 will be just like what we do now. Only that I'm going to try to not preach so long that last service and narrow that in a little bit, which will be hard for me, but because I love you, I will do my best. And so that's what our plan is. Then Monday nights, starting a week from tonight, we're changing it from 242 to what we call Reveal. Reveal, then, you've probably noticed we like the re-words around here. That's not veal, because we're not going to eat veal on Monday nights. It's not regarding veal, although I do love tasty veal. But it's revealing something. I could explain how veal is made. Would you like me to draw a picture? Anyway, and so, but Reveal is, and really what it's for, and I put it out there on social media over the last few days, especially today, and I talked about, skeptics welcome, and that's what we want. And I fully expect, at times, as we get the message out about what those Monday nights are becoming, we'll have some skeptics show up. We might even get a little light, gentle, loving debate, which would just thrill me beyond thrilled. But I'll be nice, I promise. I'll make Jennifer come and keep me nice. But we might really have some skeptics, because I think we're in a position that we want to reach. This. We want to reach the lost folks in this town. We just do. And a lot of them will never come to this building for church. We want to lovingly show them that there's an answer for the questions that many of them have. And so Monday night's going to be an open opportunity for them to come and find out that you can have a reasonable faith. And that's part of it. I put that on social media today too, that skeptics are welcome, hashtag skeptics welcome, but also hashtag reasonable faith. Part of it is to equip the saints, those that believe, and to give you even more foundation for why you can believe that God is really real. Why you can believe that the Bible, you can put it in your hands and know this is the authoritative Word of God and not have to doubt that or not be concerned about that. To know that Jesus really walked and talked and did the things that he said. How do we define that and understand those things? As well as cover some scientific topics from time to time, because if you didn't know, my life started out as a science guy, and that's really how I came to faith. And so we're not going to do science all the time, don't worry. So if you hate science, I promise we won't do it every week. But we're going to actually publish a calendar of topics. And that calendar will go out at least a month in advance, and it will have the month's topics on there. And each Monday night will sort of be its own event. And now I would love for us to have this room full of 100 people that go to Renew all the time, that are wanting to learn, how do you defend your faith? Now this is a word that I won't use very often, but the word is apologetics. Apologetics is just a fancy word. It does not mean apologizing. What it really means is defending the faith. How do you defend the faith? So let's say that you have a coworker and you get to talking about church and how wonderful it was that weekend, and they say, church is stupid, Christians are stupid, I don't buy any of that, and here's why. Wouldn't it be awesome if you were equipped to be able to meet them right there and then go, why don't we talk about what you struggle with? Let me understand why you have that philosophy or that idea, and let me show you. Would you be willing and open to let me kind of walk you through the steps for how you can know that God is real, or how you know that Jesus really was who he said he was? Whatever those reasoning that people have, I want to give you those as tools. I've spent a lot of years doing this. It's one of my favorite things. It's hard to work it in on a Sunday morning because most of the time they're not overtly biblical topics. They would have a biblical worldview, but it's not like turning to, the book of Joshua and going through detailed expository teaching, because most unbelievers would not look at the Bible as authoritative. Now, the basis for that then, and you'll hear me talk about some of this next week as we really launch this, but tonight, in my mind, is kind of the launch of it, a soft launch, if you will, as we get ready for next week. But the biblical basis for what we're talking about in this reveal time is really what Paul does in Acts 17. And in Acts 17, Paul goes into Athens. And I'm not going to read the story because I don't want to get too far down that way. But Paul goes into Athens. This is like the religious elite everywhere there. But at that time, there's tons of intellectuals and philosophers that are there that are constantly talking about godly things or spiritual things or idolatry, philosophies, things like that. But it is not a Christian area. It's not even a Jewish area. And so Paul meanders into Athens, and he notices all the idols. There's probably, experts would say there could have been as many as 30,000 idols in Athens. That's a lot of idols. And so Paul meanders in, and he says to them, I see that you're a very religious people. He's telling the truth. I mean, if you have 30,000 idols in your town, that's a very religious people. Now, it's not Jewish religious, it's not Christian religious, but they're religious. They have a system of belief, a pattern for belief. And he says, I see you're a very religious people. He doesn't pull out the Torah. He doesn't begin to quote from the book of Exodus. He would have done that if that had been a Jewish area. He could have talked about the prophets. He could have talked about Jonah or whoever he wanted to talk about. Paul was an expert in those topics, but he doesn't do that at all. But again, in Acts 13 and Acts 14, he does do some of that kind of stuff depending on the population he's talking to in Pisidian, Antioch, and Lystra. He does totally different things. But with them, he doesn't talk about Scripture at all. In fact, what he's quoting instead of Scripture is he's quoting their poets, their philosophers, and he's meeting them there and then making a reasonable argument for the resurrection of Christ. It's really brilliant in how Paul goes about it. And so part of what Reveal is going to be is that idea. That we hopefully in time we'll have 100 of our people or more that are wanting to learn how to defend the Christian faith or put foundation underneath a faith that they already have that says, I've always believed in Christ, or maybe I'm a new believer, but these things help solidify my faith and help me to grow more solid in my belief system. And then we have a whole bunch of other people that don't believe but are curious. They're seeking, or they're skeptics, and they are willing to at least explore something. And then in that, as I'm teaching on various topics, and it could be science, could be some bioethics, could be archaeology, could be history, whatever it is. We'll have all kinds of things. They're going to be able to hopefully hear that and at least come one step closer to faith. And so that's what Reveal is going to look like and what it means. Each Monday night will sort of be its own thing. So the way Monday night's going to be structured then is from 6 to 7. We're not going to do a buffet meal like we did tonight. We'll have the coffee shop open, and people can come get a salad and a sandwich, and we'll have live music that'll be family friendly. When I say family friendly, it means it won't necessarily all be Christian music. It's just music that's family friendly, and we'll have someone that's playing here. It'll probably be the same person that's playing on Friday night at the coffee shop, and they'll play for an hour while we eat and just hang out. It'll be an opportunity for that. And then from 7 to 8, I'll teach on some topic. And then we'll be done. And that's the format where we're going, which will start a week from tonight. Okay? So it's less of a alternative church service and more of defense of the faith and how you can know that God is really real and all those things that tie into that. And so, like, for instance, one of the topics along the way, pretty early will probably be, I don't have enough faith to be an atheist. If I were to make that bold claim, I don't have enough faith to be an atheist, part of what I'm saying is that to be an atheist, it takes faith. And so what are the evidences for why atheism is not the best explanation of life? And so we'll talk through that, and that'll be interesting. And so we'll hit some of those topics. It will be good for all of you, everyone in the room, everyone at Renew should want to hear these things because it will bolster your faith and strengthen your resolve on the things that you maybe already know. And if you have questions along the way, which I run into people all the time, been Christians for a long time, and they say, but I have these questions, and I don't know how to deal with them, so I just kind of put them to the back of my mind, and I just don't worry about it. I figure, it'll just all pan out, that it'll work out somehow. That's the old joke of a pantheist. It'll all pan out. It'll all pan out in the end, whatever. But it'll all work out. But there are answers for those things, and we can have a reasonable faith. Now, I'm not going to be able to make a case for you that takes away every question in your mind. I don't think we're intended to. I think there's always some mystery with God, and that's okay with me. Even being a scientific-minded, logical thinking person, I still am okay with a mystery of God and not understanding everything. That's okay with me, totally good, and I think that's intentional and purposeful. So what I want to do tonight then, I thought we could cover stem cells and cloning, but I don't think I can get that far. I kind of looked through some of my thoughts and notes, and I thought there's just no way I'm going to get all that done. I've taught on this topic a lot over the years. My favorite time was I got invited to go to, when we lived in Kansas City, I went to the University of Missouri, Kansas City. I didn't go to school there. I went to school across the street from my undergrad. But I got invited to come and talk about, from a bioethics perspective, talk about stem cells and human cloning to their medical and dental students. And so they had a big gathering, and I get into this room talking to all these medical and dental students, and then a whole bunch of professors showed up. And as they're showing up, I'm thinking, when the professors all show up in their little lab coats and stuff, I'm thinking, oh, this is going to be exciting. No one said a word about anything, but I got a chance to teach on stem cells and human cloning for a couple of hours, and that was definitely one of the highlights. It was very exciting, but my hope is that some of that will stick and that they'll give some thoughts to this because it's an important topic. And so, it's one of those topics I could probably spend about 4 or 5 hours on if we were going to go in really deep detail. I'm not going to do that to you because you would be miserable if we went into deep detail. Talking about biochemistry and calcium, potassium pumps and cellular organelles, most of you would die. A couple of you would go, ooh, that sounds fun. We can go have coffee on Friday and we'll talk through it. But the rest of you I don't want to kill. But here's where it really begins. So I think what we're going to do is we'll talk about stem cells. This is an important topic because of it came out of the ALS challenge. And so the ALS challenge, and I'm not picking on that at all, I'm just saying that with the ALS challenge, and where we're putting our money is with a particular family here. We've got kids that go to the youth group, and their family comes here, and these kids' dad, who does not come to church here, he's dying of ALS. And they have a fund set up, and we're trying to support that family specifically because that money goes to the kids. But the question came up several times when the ALS Ice Challenge was really popular over, a couple weeks ago, up to, a month ago or so, that is it okay to give money to the ALS Foundation because of how they do research? Now, here's what I'm not going to do. I'm not going to tell you yes or no. You can decide for on your own. But what it did is it brought up the topic on whether or not to support certain types of research. And the certain types of research have to do with embryonic stem cell research, which in essence is dealing with the bioethics issue of ending cellular development that begins as a fertilized egg. And so what most of you would term as abortion, it is in that genre of topic. And so several people had asked, how do we deal with this? Should we be giving money or not? And so the best that I can do is give you good scientific and theological understanding of it, and then you can decide. Is that fair? Yeah. And so part of this is that. Next week, we'll talk about the actual human cloning, which I think will be interesting to you. How many of you remember Dolly, the sheep that was cloned? Okay. And so we'll start there next week, and we'll talk about how did they do that? How did they clone Dolly? Is that okay? Do we think that they might clone humans, or have they? What are the biological stop gaps that I think God put in place to not allow some of that? But what does that mean, and what does it look like, and what are the ramifications of human cloning and that cloning technology? And so we'll talk about that next week. Again, part of it is, I think as we look at a topic like that, what you see is a creator who creates with very specific stop gaps. He creates with purpose, and he puts some things into place that don't allow us to go too far at times. Now, and we'll talk about that more next time. So what I really want to do is talk about stem cells tonight, just for a little bit, because I think what it does is it gives you some perspective on how to understand this topic of research and how do we deal with it and do we give money to, this and that and whatever. And again, I'm not going to tell you yes or no. You decide based on the research, because that's really what anyone should do in a scientific perspective. Let you hear the whole story and then you can make an informed decision. I wish our classrooms were that way in public schools. Unfortunately, they're not. Public school classrooms are one-sided. They only tell part of the story in order to have people think just like them, because the truth is you have power when you get other people to think like you. You agree with that? And so unfortunately in a scientific classroom, most of the time they're totally one-sided, a godless evolutionary process. And what's so sad about it is the way that they build an argument for it isn't even good science. And yet that's the way that these kids at this back table and other kids throughout here, they're taught that every day in textbooks just like this one, which is a textbook I actually taught out of almost 20 years ago now. And no, I didn't steal it. I bought it from Holt, Reinhardt, and Winston, just in case you're curious. So let's jump back into it. But let me start here at Psalm 139. It gives us some perspective, and I think it's an important perspective. Psalm 139, verses 13 through 16 says this: "For you formed my inward parts. You wove me in my mother's womb. I will give thanks to you, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Wonderful are your works, and my soul knows it very well. My frame was not hidden from you. When I was made in secret and skillfully wrought in the depths of the earth, your eyes have seen my unformed substance. And in your book were all written the days that were ordained for me, when as yet there was not one of them." It gives us some perspective to begin talking about topics that involve life and where does life begin. And so probably one of the first topics that we'll talk about that will actually lead into a stem cell discussion is the topic of life. And so let's talk about it for a moment. So if we were to say we found a blob, hey guys in the back, can you tune in with me? Is that okay? What we would do then is if we found a blob out in nature, so we're walking along a path and we find this ooey gooey squishy blob and we poked it with a stick, all that kind of stuff, what would we decide about whether it's alive or not? How would we come up with that conclusion? How would we decide, is this blob alive or is it just a blob? It's an important question that has to be asked, because people have been asking that question for a long time regarding life and when does it begin and all that. And so what I wanted to do then is, because I think it's interesting to do this when I could certainly lay out for you the biological principles of what defines life. What are the things that are necessary to determine this blob is alive? But it's always more interesting, especially if I were in a debate situation, if there was an opponent here and they were trying to debate me on this topic, if you can use their textbook to show that they already believe this, they just don't realize it, that's even more powerful. Does that make sense? Yeah. So I'm actually going to make a case for you that, like that story in Psalm 139, that fearfully and wonderfully made, knit together, is a scientific principle that life actually begins right in the beginning. And it's not a life begins when you start breathing or when any of those things. And so we'll just use the textbook and we'll lay it out. And I'll write these up here if you want to take notes. I think that's fair, because part of what I want to do for you is help you to understand this better. And so if you were to ask the question, what goes into life? What are the components of life? The very first one is reproduction. Now, again, I'm using a high school level, upper high school level, like junior level textbook. Again, I taught right out of the same book, and it's interesting, but this is the topic on life. It has 5 characteristic properties. There's all kinds of things that people have come up with over time, but every scientist that has any knowledge, any training, would say to you there's 5 primary principles that we could use as a test to determine if this blob is alive. And the first one they would look at, or one of the first ones, is reproduction. Does it have the ability to reproduce? Now, there's a couple things on that. One of those would be a process called mitosis, and we'll talk about that more next week when we talk about cloning. But mitosis is a set of conditions that a cell will go through in order to divide itself to become multiple cells. And so you have one cell, so let's say we have a fertilized egg, and that one cell divides and becomes two. And those two become 4, and the 4 become 8, and the 8 becomes 16. That process is called mitosis. It is cellular reproduction as the cell is reproducing itself through a complex series of steps. That's the part where I would stop there and not bore you with the details, okay? But mitosis would be defined as cellular reproduction. It's reproducing itself. Now, the other side of how they would define reproduction, though, is the ability to create offspring. Now, if we're talking about a fertilized egg, does it have the ability to create offspring? The answer is absolutely. Because from an offspring's perspective, so I'm going to flip the page and I'm going to come back to that one in a second. So you have two types of cells in your body. The first one is called a somatic cell. Somatic or soma means body. Every cell in your body has the exact same genetic package. It's 2 copies of 23 chromosomes. So you have 46 chromosomes. Every cell has the exact same package. So a cell in your eyeball, and a cell in your pinky, and a cell in your knee, and a cell in your liver, every single cell has those same 46 chromosomes that make up the body cells, every one of them. And then you have another one, the other type, you have 2 types. This is 46 chromosomes. You also have what's called sex cells, which is 23. A sex cell would be the egg or the sperm, and it has exactly half of what a somatic cell has. Hang on, I'll get there. I'll take questions in a second. So sex cell would be eggs or sperm. They have one set because the somatic cells, there are 2 sets of chromosomes. They're identical. And so they weave together. If you've ever seen the double helix DNA, that is 2 sets of the exact same thing that make up 46 chromosomes. 23 pairs is what a somatic cell. So in your eyeball, you have 23 pairs of chromosomes that make a total of 46 chromosomes. But the sex cells have 23. Does that make sense? Everybody with me so far? Okay. Now this will be really important. We'll save this chart for when we talk about human cloning and how we get there. But every cell in your body has this same genetic package, okay? And so it all starts here, and you get 2 copies of that in every cell. But worked into that genetic package, into those chromosomes, is the ability for that organism to reproduce, okay? So the way that it works in sexual reproduction is you have an egg cell that has 23 chromosomes. It comes into contact with a sperm cell that has 23 chromosomes. Those chromosomes meet together. A process called crossing over occurs where what's recessive and what's dominant is decided, and then it becomes a totally new organism. It is no longer mom. It is no longer dad. So crossing over occurs within a few hours of the egg and the sperm coming together. And when crossing over occurs, it's no longer 23 chromosomes of mom and 23 chromosomes of dad that are separate. Those 23 and 23 now form 46, and it makes up its own unique, identifiable genetic makeup that's totally separate and unique from mom or dad. Everybody with me on that? Okay, within a few hours, genetically. But built into those 46 chromosomes, or 2 pairs of the 23, is the ability to reproduce genetically. Now, if I were debating this with someone, they would go, yes, but that cell can't have sexual reproduction. And my answer would be true, but neither can a 3-year-old. Based on biologically, a 3-year-old can't either. And so does that mean the 3-year-old's not alive because they can't sexually reproduce at that moment? The answer is, of course not. The answer really is, does it have the genetic capability of reproducing itself? Is that everybody with me? So in the debate situation, if they were saying, yeah, but that cell, one cell, it can't reproduce. Well, sure it can through mitosis. They would say, well, yes, but what about the ability to create offspring? Well, until they go through until the hormones change and those in a female until their eggs in the ovaries begin to meiotically, it's another process called meiosis, until those cells begin to mature enough, they can't reproduce either. And that has to do with hormones. But that doesn't mean until they're 12 or 14 they're not alive. It just means, do they have the genetic capability to do it? Everybody with me?
Yeah.
So that would be the first thing. It has the ability to reproduce. The second thing in the book is heredity. Now, not all of them will take as long to explain as that one, but I'm trying to do this really light sciencey and not kill you too much, okay? Heredity. And basically, heredity is, do they have genetic? Is there a genetic makeup, a genetic package in that? When I was in college and studying in genetics, we used to do gel electrophoresis, which means there's a gel plate, and it's like almost like it's like hair gel. It was kind of like hair gel, okay? And you would put different unknowns in these little wells, and then you would run electrical currents through it in the right kind of liquid medium, and it would pull the genetics basically through, and you could determine what things were. Anybody remember the O.J. Simpson case? Nobody remembers that? I was going to say, oh no, I'm older than I thought. That's when the DNA stuff became popular, and people began to see it. And it looked like a sheet like this, and it had little blue lines on it that looked kind of like this. It would have these wells, and it would be like this. And then, it'd be different. That kind of stuff. And that's what it looks like. And so what would happen if you found a blood spot on the floor, you could run that blood spot through this, and then you could take blood from me and run it in this well, and blood from you and run it in this well, and whatever, blood from a dog and run it in this well, and you could line up the genetic markers and it would tell you if it's a match or not. That's how they do that. That's part of how they do the DNA testing. That's a real low-end way they do DNA testing, but back in those days, that's where it kind of began, okay? And so heredity basically just says, is there DNA? Is there deoxyribonucleic acid? Everybody remember that from biology class? Is there DNA present? That means there's information held in whatever substance you found. So if the blob, we took a sample of it, and we ran it in our wells, and it came up as, yes, this has genetic material in it, we would know it has heredity. Everybody with me so far? Okay. So if you were to go outside and pick a piece of tree sap off of there and ran it in there, would it have that? The answer is yes, it would. But it would be marked as plant DNA, not human DNA. Everybody with me? So you can tell different things. All right. Number 3, I think cellular organization. Yep, cellular organization. Cellular organization, then, is there an organized cellular structure? Are the cells organized in any way? Well, once cells begin to divide, and these somatic cells, you start to see them. Again, mom and dad have both contributed 23 chromosomes, crossing over, and that's, if you're a note taker, crossing over is the catch to that. When crossing over occurs, it's no longer mom, it's no longer dad, it is a unique individual genetically. Okay? Happens within hours of those two coming together. And so now we have this. As those cells begin to divide, and the 1 becomes 2, and those 2 become 4, and the 4 become 8, and 16, and so on, which in an embryo, this is really what it looks like in the beginning. It's just a ball of cells. That, if you're a science nerd, that's called a morula, and it's a ball of cells. But there's organization within and inside the cell itself. It's organized. Hey, somebody tell me, just for nerd's sake, because of cellular organization, inside of a cell, what are some of the organelles that make up a cell?
Nucleus.
Okay, so we've got a nucleus. Anybody else? Cytoplasm is all the way through there. Yep. Endoplasmic reticulum is one of my favorites. What resides on endoplasmic reticulum, high school biology students? Ribosomes. What else? Mitochondria. Mitochondria are the power packs. They provide energy. And I could talk for an hour about mitochondria by itself. Anyone want to hear that? It's fun, though. There's mitochondrial DNA and everything. It's amazing. There's actually a theory out there that is argued often. It's called the Mitochondrial Eve Hypothesis. I'm not sure if it's real or not. I've read articles on both sides of the fence. But the Mitochondrial Eve Hypothesis is that we found that mitochondria actually have a genetic package on their own besides the nucleus. And this is tracked back to, they would say there is a common female that all mitochondria originate from. It's kind of interesting. Mitochondrial Eve Hypothesis, what's called. What else? We'll just do a couple more. How about lysosomes? Those are one of my favorites. They're called the little death sacs. So when that cell needs to die, the lysosome opens up and the enzymes are released and it actually kills and eats the cell. Isn't that kind of crazy? What else? You don't care, do you? All right, so.
I'm caring.
But here's the thing. Okay, so let's look at the cell just for a second. I want you to see something important. So there's a bunch more organelles here, little pieces that make up one single cell. And so when daddy contributes and mommy contribute, and we get 46 chromosomes that are contained in the first cell, and then all this stuff that go to support it, that DNA created every one of these organelles. Here's what's amazing. That cell had to have originated with all those organelles. In other words, if it were an evolution model and cells were developing over eons and eons of time, and one of these little organelles would develop and at one point, and then a million years later another one would, it wouldn't work. Every single organelle is necessary for that cell to function. It is irreducibly complex, which again proves that it did not evolve. There's absolutely no chance, 0% chance, that random chemicals in a warm pond would create this cellular organization. Okay? And so that's what's necessary. So when we look at it, do we find cellular organization? The answer is absolutely. So number 4 in our textbook is metabolism. I'll speed this up, I promise. Metabolism, but this is an important point we're making. So metabolism is basically the use of energy. It's able to take in different substances and create energy for itself to function. A cell, in order to divide, must have energy. And so metabolism then is something that's built in partly to do with our mitochondria, but other processes of in and outflow of different chemicals give it energy. And then number 5 is homeostasis. Homeostasis. Tell me what that means from a non-cellular level. Just what's homeostasis mean? Somebody knows in here. Stable. Level on maybe 2 sides. Homeostasis would be that there's a, like homogeneous. Homogeneous would be a root of the same word. Homogeneous means it's a uniform all throughout. So homeostasis means that inside the cell and outside the cell, there's a balance. And so what happens then, and I could show you pictures in the textbook, what you find is that the cell, which looks like that thing that we drew with all the organelles, that cell under a high-powered microscope, you would see things like on page 47 up here, and you can look at it, which are all these little pumps and channels that are built into a cell. A double lipid layer, which is a little fat layer that keeps the cellular stuff inside and the other stuff outside, but there are little channels that are constantly passing different chemicals back and forth to maintain a level of homeostasis so that the cell doesn't explode, basically. And so you have all these little pumps that are pumping out sodium and calcium in to keep that level just right. And even a single cell will do that. And so it's amazing. And again, you look at this and you go, how in the world would you think that this complexity, and I only talked about for 60 seconds, this complexity happened on accident? There's absolutely no way, not in a million, billion, trillion, quadrillion years would that happen on accident. And so here's the definition of life then: reproduction, heredity, cellular organization, metabolism, homeostasis. So we would use these 5, every scientist would. If we found the blob in the forest, we would ask these questions. Does it have a reproduction ability? Does it have heredity? Is there cellular organization? Is there metabolism? And is there homeostasis? If yes to all of those, it's alive. If no to one of those, it's not alive. Everybody with me? So the question then is, when dad, XY, and mom, XX, both contribute 23 chromosomes and sex cells to create a somatic cell, 46 chromosomes, even one cell, does it fit the 5 aspects of definition of life? And the answer is yes. Yes. There is absolutely no question that life begins at conception from a biological perspective. People will argue, if I were debating somebody, they would say, well, it may fit it from a cellular level, but it can't live on its own. Well, guess what? Neither can a one-day-old child live on its own. So the live on its own, which is the typical argument for this, it doesn't work. I mean, we've got 23-year-olds that can't live on their own, that kind of thing. But, not all 23-year-olds, didn't offend too many people in here. I'm just playing. It's a joke. But just because you can or can't live on your own has nothing to do with cellular organization, heredity, metabolism, and reproduction, and all those that define life. Life is defined biologically, and every scientist would agree that these are the 5 standards. So, that's the beginning step of understanding where we go with stem cells. Let me just talk for about 10 more minutes then about the stem cells themselves, because that you had to see that part for everything else to make sense. If you're looking at it from a bioethics perspective. Bioethics meaning, from a biological perspective, is this ethical to do this or not, based on what we see from a scientific or rational perspective or whatever. And so what you have to understand first is every organism is made up of cells, just like I've defined here for you. I tried to do it nice and gentle without killing you. Hopefully you got that and understood it. But every organism is composed of a body of cells. And again, all those cells have the exact same genetic makeup. So again, a liver cell, so if we were to do this and we have our DNA strands, when we see all that stuff in here, there's some of these that have to do with different parts of our body. So for instance, Jennifer, and we'll just use eye color as an example. And so, if Jennifer is, Jennifer has blue eyes, which means she is homozygous recessive for blue eyes. Every blue-eyed person in here is homozygous recessive for blue eyes. That's the genetics. I have blue eyes, which means I'm also homozygous recessive for blue eyes, which means our children had a 100% chance of having blue eyes. It would be impossible to have a brown-eyed child. Now, if she had brown eyes and she was heterozygous for brown eyes and I was blue-eyed, and again, how we would determine if she's heterozygous or homozygous dominant based on her parents. And so we begin to look at it like this. And we would see big B, little b, little b, little b, big B, little b, little b, little b. Our kids would have a 50% chance of having brown eyes, which is heterozygous, and a 50% chance of having blue eyes. You begin to lay out that genetic structure like that. But different genes will have different places that they stand out. But in this little genetic package, only this little piece might have anything to do with eye color. Does that make sense? And let's say that little genetic piece has to do with eyes in general, and then this little piece has to do with color. It's just an infinitesimal little itty-bitty piece. And so if I have a cell that makes up the colorful part of my eye, this part of the genetics are turned on, and everything else is sort of dormant. It's still there, but it's not turned on. Just that one little spot is turned on if it makes up an eye cell that has color. But everything else in there has all the same genetics. Everybody with me on that? Every cell in your body does. But your liver may be this little itty-bitty cell down here. And that one is turned on to become a liver cell. It still has the whole genetic package, but everything else is turned off. Everything else is dormant in a sense. But everything else would eventually show up if we were to do that little electrophoresis thing. And so all of them are the same, but what happens then is within a cell, different cells will begin to specialize. Just like, again, that whole genetic package, it begins at certain times, in the cellular development, it will begin to specialize. So the cell will know, oh, I'm a liver cell. I need to turn on this little itty-bitty piece of genetic material, and then I'm going to duplicate that over and over and over again because I'm a liver cell. That's how our body functions and works. But a stem cell is a generic cell. A stem cell has not specialized. It has the whole genetic package, but there's not a specialized portion of it. It's just the whole package, and it just hangs out. You find stem cells in various parts of the body. You find them in your nasal passages. You find them in fat, actually, which was kind of a surprise. We found stem cells in fat. You have a ton of them in bone marrow. And so you have these stem cells, which are unspecialized cells. They're just generic. And what happens when a stem cell comes in contact with another cell, it takes on the attributes of that cell. And so if we isolated a stem cell from, let's say, bone marrow, and I had liver damage, I pointed the wrong side. If I had liver damage over here, and I've hurt my liver in some way, you could take a bunch of stem cells, which are generic cells, they haven't been specialized, and put them with those liver cells, and guess what? They would go, oh, you want me to be a liver cell? I'll turn that part on. And that's what they do. And so stem cells are one of the most amazing things that we've ever seen or experienced, that they're generic cells, full genetic makeup, and you put them in the right environment with another existing cell that is specialized, and it will take on the attributes of that cell. So the amazing part about that is they're just completely flexible. They'll assimilate in and become that cell. Okay? Here's the deal, though. There are two types. The first type is an adult stem cell. Adult stem cells are everyone in this room. You've been born. So once you've been born, if you can harvest those generic cells, which you can do again, nasal passage, bone marrow, fat, and there's some other places you can pull them out of. You can harvest those and have those start dividing. So you could harvest, theoretically, you could harvest one stem cell, and then in the right environment, divide those, and you'd have a whole bunch of generic cells that are ready to go take on the attributes of whatever cell you put them with. That's a very unscientific generic answer. But everybody with me? Adult stem cell. There are no bioethics issues whatsoever with capturing an adult stem cell. I could go into the doctor right now, and they would put a big needle right here in my sternum, and they could draw up bone marrow and isolate the stem cells that are there. And in fact, what's interesting is, have anyone ever heard of a bone marrow transplant? Guess what? That's stem cells. We didn't realize that's what was curing diseases. When they get a bone marrow transplant, it was a stem cell. You put a stem cell with a bunch of broken, hurting cells, and they would go, hey, we're here to become like you, and we're healthy and strong, and we'll help the cell along. That's what a bone marrow transplant is. It's using adult stem cells. The other place you find adult stem cells is in cord blood. And so that's a really rich place for stem cells. And so once the baby is born, the placenta is delivered in that cord, gajillions of stem cells. It is a wonderful place to harvest. But because it's in a baby, is that an embryonic stem cell? No. It's an adult stem cell. It's a matured cell, but they're generic cells. The other kind are called embryonic. Embryonic stem cells. This is what the debate is over. Okay? So to get an embryonic stem cell, here's what you do. You take a daddy cell, and you take a mommy cell, you fuse them together, and you create a cell. Okay? So that would be like sexual reproduction. What happens then is that one cell, this is the nucleus, why I drew it that way, that one cell becomes 2, that becomes 4, and becomes 8 and 16, the morula ball of cells. But then something amazing begins to happen as that begins to develop. And it creates this little space. This is called a blastula, which if left to continue to grow, that would end up actually being the gut tract from the mouth to the anus as it begins to specialize. Because at this point, the cells are beginning to specialize. But within here are stem cells, tons of them. And so what they do to capture embryonic stem cells is at this point, they stop the development of the cells. So is this alive? Based on our earlier definition, yes. This is alive. They stop the development of it. They rupture this, and they take out the embryonic stem cells. And they begin to propagate those. And so that's the other place you can get stem cells from. Theoretically, adult stem cells and embryonic stem cells are the exact same. The only difference is, in the adult, they come out of an adult like you or me. In the embryonic, you had to kill the embryo in order to get those out. But as far as the cell is concerned, there's really not a big difference in there until you begin to use them. And so what's amazing about that is the problems that this causes. And so when they have taken those embryonic stem cells out and tried to use them for curative medicine, where they would put those embryonic stem cells with a hurt liver, for instance, we have never, not one time, found any cure of any disease or disorder ever. Never. Not one. Everybody hear me? Not one single cure or benefit of using an embryonic stem cell. And in fact, almost always what it does is cause tumors and cancer cells to begin to grow, which is really interesting if you think about it. Now again, as far as genetics are concerned, it's basically the same kind of thing. But when they harvest embryonic stem cells and they begin to use them there, it causes tumors and cancer. Not every time, but often it does. And so a scientist, if I were debating it, they go, yeah, but we haven't given enough time, enough research. They've been trying this for 25 years, 25, and never once had they found any curative medicine using an embryonic stem cell ever. Never, 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 never. Not one time. And so when they use adult stem cells, though, we have found over 70 different disorders have been cured or improved through research of taking adult stem cells from cord blood or from nasal passages or whatever and using those in curative medicine. Over 70 disorders that they found, and some of those and there's huge lists of them out there, like cerebral palsy. They've found benefit to cerebral palsy patients with adult stem cell treatments. Heart damage, hearts that have been damaged to heart attacks, they've treated with adult stem cells, and it's grown new heart tissue. They've even found nerve tissue being able to be regenerated through adult stem cell use, and all kinds of things. Parkinson's, epilepsy, on and on and on it goes. They found at least 70 plus disorders have been improved or cured completely by adult stem cells. But when embryonic come into play, not once, never, not one benefit. And so when it comes down to it, to kind of close this part out, because I don't want to harm you on your time, there's a million other things I could say about it. But when it comes down to research, where we need to put, basically from a scientific perspective, you could decide if you have these two types. You have embryonic stem cells and you have adult stem cells. A part of adult, again, is from cord blood. That's considered an adult stem cell, not embryonic. You have these two types. Over 70 different cures found by using adult stem cells, 0 for embryonic. If you were a scientist, where would you put your money? So no bioethics issues. This is a bioethics issue of life and defining what life is and whether or not you have access to do things with it or not. This is the debate. That's why the debate is out there on things like ALS and other research entities that use embryonic stem cells in their research. I don't know why they do, because from a purely scientific perspective, it makes no sense to spend another dollar on embryonic stem cell research when adult stem cell research continues to show amazing results. And by the way, one of the other things, and we'll talk about it next week when we talk about cloning, because cloning actually fits into this. This is part 1 of cloning. But what you find with these stem cells is that they're so generic that you can transplant a stem cell from you into me, and there's no issues with it matching up. You know how you have, like if I were to have a liver transplant from you to me, that would mean you're dead. Or hopefully not. But if we had a full liver transplant, of course you can transplant a part of it, you would have to be on anti-rejection medicine for the rest of your life. But stem cells, there's no rejection. It's totally generic, which is amazing. And so you can transplant stem cells from you right into me and have no rejection issues. And those cells will go, oh, you want me to become a heart cell? Okay, I'm on it. And they will specialize right there. It's an amazing, amazing, amazing thing. And it just goes to show our amazing creator and how creative he is, but also how specific he is and what is important to him and how we understand life and what we do with that. So I'll stop there. I'll take a couple questions if you have them. Next week you want to come back, because then what we do is we take this and say, how do you create a human clone using the same stuff? Because you know, Dolly, the sheep, was an example. How does that happen? What are they doing with that? And how is it a bioethics issue? Carmen.
How fast does a stem cell recognize and start changing?
It's very fast. I mean, what they will capture those stem cells and they'll propagate them, which means they'll allow them to mitotically divide, and then they will introduce the host cell, and they'll be very quickly, as they begin to divide, they'll begin to take on the attributes of those cells.
So something that maybe you can see happening over a period of
Yeah,
days?
yeah. It's quick. That's why, has anyone in here ever experienced a bone marrow transplant? They can harvest the bone marrow and they can replant it very quickly. I mean, it's just a matter of days because what they do is they harvest it and then they propagate them to get more of those healthy cells and they reintroduce them. It doesn't take long to do that. Yeah.
I've been wondering with the embryonic stem cell, do you think the reason why they keep putting money that way is hoping that someday they'll be able to open up other avenues of like that growing babies and stuff like that?
Yeah. Well, that might be a better question for when we talk about cloning, because it fits into that world. But, I mean, the answer for why they do it, I honestly don't know, because from a purely curative medicine perspective, they should have figured it out a long time ago. These don't work. It just doesn't work. All we're doing is creating tumors and uselessness. And beyond that, and some of the things we could talk about next time, is in order to get enough cells, because what you're really, in order to get enough embryonic stem cells, you would have to create millions of host cells to rupture them to get enough just to cure like diabetes or something. If we wanted to cure diabetes, for instance, using stem cells, if embryonic worked, we're talking about like 175,000 women taking high-level hormones to produce 10 eggs each that are mature enough to be able to start mitotically dividing and then capture those stem cells. So, I mean, there's all kinds of ramifications for that. So even if they figured it out and it worked, in order to capture enough embryonic stem cells, it's ludicrous how far they'd have to go. I don't know why. I really don't know why they're still playing with this. They should have figured it out a long time ago. My best guess is one of the age-old scientific answers is if we give it enough time, it will, blah, blah, blah. But it doesn't even make sense, because in this room, we have enough adult stem cells to begin curing certain things. I mean, that's the thing, is we can create those all day long, and there's no bioethics issues at all. But when you get to the embryonics, it's a totally different story. It's harder to get them. It's a longer process to get them. It's longer to propagate them. It causes tumors and all kinds of challenges when you begin to use them in curative medicine. And if we actually got something that worked and then we try to turn it into curative medicine itself, it would be so immense and so much, we would never be able to harvest enough. So it makes no sense whatsoever. None. Zero. So it's just, I don't know. I think it keeps a doorway open, and there's other things we could talk about next week in cloning, with this cellular reserve that they have, 400,000 cells or 400,000 zygotes or fertilized eggs that are in fertility clinics that they say, those are all useless and whatever, and so we can use those and blah, 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 blah. I don't know. I really don't know. It makes no sense. So, all right. So here's my hope. You see that we were fearfully and wonderfully made. Do you see it?
Yes.
Just from a really, really very gentle overview of, and it was a gentle overview, believe it or not. I had to work really hard to make it that gentle. But when you look at this, I hope what you see is Psalm 139. You were fearfully and wonderfully made. God knit you together with purpose. You were designed. You were thought out and crafted in an amazing, amazing way. You have purpose. You are alive for a reason. And you need to know it because it changes everything. It does. So, next week, we'll jump off from here. We'll talk about human cloning for 1 week, and then we'll publish our schedule, some other things, like I don't have enough faith to be an atheist kind of stuff. And hopefully you'll be encouraged by that. And hopefully you got some resources you can take home and share with people when they ask questions, because people are curious about this stuff, and at least people are misinformed and need to know what the reality is. So hopefully it'll help you. Let me pray for you and then we'll be done. God, thanks for tonight. Thank you for making us and creating us in such an amazing way. I'm in awe every time I talk about the complexity of how you created life. And I'm just so thankful that you did it that way. And I'm thankful that you've revealed it to us so that we can see it and experience it and know that you're a creator. We praise you for tonight. It's in Jesus that we pray. Amen. Hey, if you didn't get one yesterday, maybe Travis, there's a basket over there. I've got some papers and a CD for you to put in your car and listen to on the way home. That's talking about our stuff for the weekend. Hopefully you'll get one of those on your way out. We'll see you soon.
Thanks for the science center.
Sure.
It was really good, Spencer, really good.
Good.
They take a long time to beans out of the
Yeah.
glue out of it.
Oh, yeah.
In a
Yeah.
blender.
Yeah.
Because my joints have been
Oh, yeah.
dislocated from my...
Yeah. It's amazing.
I mean, what they can do is just...
I agree.
Wow.
It is.